Bernie Sanders drops out of the race for the presidency. Stocks have a weird rally in the middle of the day yesterday. William Barr calls out the World Health Organization, and the death projections may be lower than we initially thought. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. And in other news, my globe is gone. That's what happens when you clean out your downloads folder, but that was where you put the globe from. So I am Jay Edgar. This is Contemporary. We've got a lot to get to today, including my chance to laugh at the DNC and their progressive counterparts for killing the revolution. But before we do that, make sure you head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is a great one-place stop for news that comes from working people for working people. We have the generational gap. We've got this show. We've got Wyatt Birkenhoff. We've got the R-rated conservative. We've got Stephen Ignoramus, and we've got even more content yet to come. So go and check us out over there. You're going to love it, folks, I promise. And make sure you're over there checking us out because we will be doing the 12-hour stream tomorrow starting at 12 Eastern Time, 11 Central, 9 Pacific. And we've got guests from all of those time zones I mentioned, and even one from Mountain Time, too. So go and check that out. Top story of the day. Senator Bernie Sanders has suspended his campaign. We all thought that he was going to go for the end and he was going to win it all. He was going to be the one. He's going to be the guy that's going to save us from ourselves, from the fact that we elected the evil Trumpler. The evil Trump, the evil one whose name shall not be mentioned. He was going to be our hero, the revolutionary, the one that was going to... No, he wasn't. We all knew this was going to happen. So, we're talking from CNN Politics, from Gregory Krieg, Ryan Nobles, and Annie Greyer. Bernie Sanders drops out of the 2020 race, clearing Joe Biden's path to the Democratic nomination. Senator Bernie Sanders ended his presidential campaign on Wednesday, clearing Joe Biden's path to the Democratic nomination. In a showdown with President Donald Trump in November, Sanders first made the announcement. In a call with his staff, his campaign said, "I wish I could give you better news, but I think you know the truth. And that is we are now some 300 delegates behind Vice President Biden. And the path to victory is virtually impossible," Sanders said in a live stream after the call. "So, while we are winning the ideological battle, and while we are winning the support of so many young people and working people throughout the country, I have concluded that this battle for the Democratic nomination will not be successful. And so, today, I am announcing the suspension of my campaign. Thank you to my supporters for the fourth house which I intend to buy now, and the endless supply of tapioca pudding cup that I will eat at any time, at any given time, throughout the day, unless I am on the Senate floor, in which that is not allowed." Sanders' exit caps a stunning reversal of fortune following a strong performance in the first three states that voted in February. The nomination appeared his for the taking until, on the last day of February, Biden surged to a blowout victory in South Carolina that set off a consolidation of moderate voters around the former vice president. The contest ends now as the country continues to grapple with the coronavirus pandemic, which halted in-person campaigning for both Sanders and Biden and has led many states to delay their primary elections. Sanders said he did not make the decision lightly, describing it as a very difficult and painful decision. "Over the last few weeks, Jane and I, in consultation with top staff and many of our prominent supporters, have made an honest assessment of the prospects for victory. If I believed we had a feasible path to the nomination, I would certainly continue the campaign, but it's just not there," he said. So, I don't want to get too tinfoily on this here, but I do want to bring something up. Now, nobody knows who's going to win in Wisconsin because of the mail-in and absentee ballots, but mysteriously, after the Wisconsin race with Sanders 300 delegates behind, you would think he would have waited, at least because he stayed in for long enough for the race. He would have at least waited till the end of the race, till they counted, to see whether or not to go forward. Because, I mean, we've got UW-Milwaukee, UW-Madison, and Marquette all swing heavily for Biden, and that is the major population center of our country. or not our country, but our state rather. The major population centers all swing hard for Bernie, and UWGB doesn't do much better. That swings hard for Bernie too. So you would have thought that he would have waited to see what the Wisconsin results were. But he said last week and the week before that he had to reassess his campaign. And Wisconsin did have a very, very important progressive that they were trying to get onto our Supreme Court over here. So I don't necessarily think that he went into Wisconsin expecting to win. I do, looking at the data, think that he may have been in there to drive the vote out to try and get this particular justice elected in. Otherwise, he would have waited until the 13th when the rest of us know who won this state and where the delegate count was going to land, because we have no idea right now. We're not going to know for another week. So that is something to keep in mind as you're going forward and you're thinking about what Bernie Sanders did. I don't think he was staying in just to win the president. I think he knew he was boned at that point. He was just trying to drive the vote to get another progressive voice in and try and win this state back, or at least make it so that they could, maybe cheat to win this state. Who knows? But this led to a number of different things happening over the last couple of days, and the first thing that we need to talk about, of course, is the stocks, because I usually start with that, but with Bernie out, we definitely had to stop with Bernie. So this is from Ed Carson over at Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones Futures Coronavirus Stock Market Rally lacks two key qualities, analyzing 5 key stocks. Dow Jones Futures fell modestly early along with S&P 500 Futures and NASDAQ Futures as investors await weekly jobless claims and key OPEC meetings over emergency production cuts. The coronavirus stock market rally rebounded Wednesday amid improving COVID-19 forecasts. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Dexcom, and Nvidia made positive moves during the session. Costco reported March sales growth that missed some estimates. Costco fell in extended trade. The new coronavirus stock market has a few problems. Here are 2. Growth stocks generally outperformed during stock market crash, but have lagged somewhat during the coronavirus stock market rally. Typical growth stocks lead market uptrends, but this one has been led by the likes of Dow Jones giants Boeing, ExxonMobil, and other companies whose businesses have been crushed by the coronavirus shutdowns. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has a rising relative strength line reflecting its recent outperformance versus the S&P 500 index, but the RS line for the NASDAQ Composite has lagged during the coronavirus stock market rally. That's true for Apple stock and, surprisingly, Amazon stock. The RS line for Microsoft stock has continued to lead. Dexcom stock and Nvidia stock had strong RS lines until the past few days, but that's not entirely negative. The RS line is the blue line in the charts below. Breakouts are scarce and aren't working. While not surprising that many stocks need more time after the near vertical stock market crash, the coronavirus rally has had a few breakouts. Worse, the breakouts have struggled. The DocuSign breakout failed, while Vertex Pharmaceuticals and Seattle Genetics have fallen below recent buy points. Qualys did break out Wednesday. Nvidia stock broke out Tuesday, but only for a minute or two. Microsoft stock retreated below an early entry Tuesday. Dexcom stock has not yet triggered a buy point, while Amazon stock has edged higher from an aggressive entry. Microsoft stock and Amazon stock are on Swing Trader. Microsoft, Amazon, and Dexcom are all on IBD leaderboard watch list. So on the futures, Dow Jones futures fell 0.9% versus fair value, even with Walt Disney jumping 5% before the open on strong Disney Plus subscriber figures. S&P 500 futures declined 1.05%. NASDAQ 100 futures retreated 1.15%. In the past few days, Dow Jones futures have calmed down after extreme volatility during the coronavirus stock market crash. Crude oil futures rose solidly overnight after Wednesday's strong rebound ahead of Thursday's OPEC meeting. Crude oil prices plunged to long-time lows in recent weeks as the coronavirus crisis slashed demand, while the Saudi-Russia price war flooded an already overflowing market. The OPEC meeting with Russia and others expected to lead to an agreement on emergency output cut, but some experts fear OPEC production cut won't be large enough. So, that's something that we need to look into going forward. But one of the things that I noticed yesterday while I was It was today I was looking at it, but while I was looking at the stocks, I noticed that right around, I don't know, 11 o'clock Central Time on the chart, there was a mysterious spike in the stock market. The Dow Jones was the one I was looking at, but apparently the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq had similar spikes. But yeah, just right around 11 o'clock. Now, I'm not saying that the markets were uneasy about the prospect that Bernie Sanders was staying in the race, but I'm just saying, about the time he dropped out, the stock started to tick up a little bit here, so take that as you will. Let's look in over at CNBC. This is from Fred Imbert and Maggie Fitzgerald. Dow rallies 700 points, retakes 2,300 as market rebound continues. Stocks surged on Wednesday after Senator Bernie Sanders dropped out of the presidential race, relieving some of Wall Street's political concerns amid the economic crisis stemming from the coronavirus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 779.71 points, or 3.4%, to close at 23,433.57. The S&P 500 climbed 3.4% to 2749.98, while the Nasdaq Composite advanced 2.6% to 8090.90. Hope the U.S. could start to turn a corner on the coronavirus outbreak in the near future also lifted equities. Some of Sanders' policy proposals, including Medicare for All, raised concern among several business owners and investors who feared taxes would go up under his presidency. Wednesday's news puts former Vice President Joe Biden, who is seen by Wall Street as a more market-friendly candidate, closer to the Democratic nomination. Sanders' exit removes the tail risk of some of his policies, immediately sets up focus on Biden versus Trump, said Ed Mills, Washington policy strategist at Raymond James. Biden's policies will get a new scrutiny now he is the presumptive nominee, but the truth of the matter is that the markets will be looking towards Washington more to help the economy, and much of the assistance matches his platform. In the U.S., the number of daily increases in coronavirus cases has fallen since Friday. According to data from Johns Hopkins University, daily increases in global cases have also fallen since then. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, told Fox News on Wednesday that the U.S. death count related to the coronavirus is now lower than initially thought, noting there should be a turnaround this week. He added, however, virus efforts should be intensified. So, just like I said, Bernie got out of the race and the stocks went up. It's interesting, and I didn't get the citation off of this. I saw an Instagram post, though. It is interesting, according to Limbaugh, and I didn't think about it until I saw this post, but according to Limbaugh, it took a global pandemic, shutting down world markets, and the Congress telling people not to go to work, shutting down the U.S. economy, in order for us to get the stock market down to Barack Obama's highest point. It's interesting to see. It's an interesting way to look at it, too. It's not something I would have normally put into my head. I know that we were talking about the fact that we wiped out everything from the Trump administration, but on the other side of it, yes, we did only get down to Barack Obama's highest point. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's move on to one more from CNBC. This is the downside, of course, of the news that we're going to be seeing today. U.S. weekly jobless claims jumped by 6.6 million, bringing 3-week totals to more than 16 million. And like I said, this is something we do need to keep in mind as we're looking at this story, is the fact that, yes, we had 6.6 million going up from 10 million last week here. So we're having a massive spike of jobless claims after Congress told everyone to go home and not go to work. But we're having it all at once. Whereas when we had the crash in 2008, it was spread out over several months as more and more businesses shut down because the bailout only affected and helped the rich. This is from Jeff Cox. Jobless rolls continue to swell due to the coronavirus shutdown, with 6.6 million Americans filing first-time unemployment claims in the week ended April 4th, the Labor Department reported on Thursday. That brings the total over the past 3 weeks to more than 16 million. The most recent number represents a decline of 261,000 from a week ago, which was revised up by 219,000 to nearly 6.9 million. The ongoing surge in filings for unemployment insurance has been exacerbated by the expansion of those who can file a claim. The CARES Act has expanded the group to include self-employed and independent contractors. Prior to the social distancing efforts used to combat the coronavirus spread, the jobs market has been strong. In the 6-month period prior to a shutdown that has taken offline much of the U.S. economy's capacity, non-farm payroll growth had averaged 221,000 a month. However, March saw a decline of 701,000 that only began to measure how deeply the virus had impacted the employment situation. Most of that job decline came in restaurant and drinking establishments, though healthcare and social assistance also took a hit. A more representative number of the actual hit to employment came through the Labor Department's survey of households, which indicated a drop of nearly 3 million from the employment ranks. A large contributor to that number was the 1.3 million people who dropped out of the labor force as they lost their jobs but were unable to look for work because of the coronavirus restrictions. These numbers helped push up the headline unemployment rate from 3.5 to 4.4% and drove a more encompassing number that includes those not looking for work and underemployed from 7% to 8.7%, the biggest 1-month gain in the history of that measure. This is breaking news. Check back here for updates. So, one of the biggest things to keep in mind when we look at this, of course, is it's happening all at once. But, we have been putting measures in place to make sure that these people do have a job to go back to. And a lot of them are going to. This is going to be a temporary thing. And even if some of these restaurants don't open back up, which some of them aren't going to, some of these small businesses don't have the coffers to be able to stay shut down for an extended period of time, showing why some of them insisted on staying open for the takeout business just so they can get some money coming back in and keeping some people working. But there is an entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what I pointed out. And especially if some of these businesses go under, their assets are going to be for sale for under market value, I would have to imagine. And people are going to take advantage of that. People are going to put other people to work. It's what we do in this country. It's what we've always done. So let's look and see what Axios has to say. Similar vein, another 6.6 million jobless claims filed last week amid coronavirus crisis. This is from Courtney Brown. Another 6.6 million Americans filed for unemployment last week, the Labor Department announced Thursday. It adds to the staggering 10 million jobless claims in recent weeks, by far the sharpest spike in American history, as the world economy has ground to a halt in an effort to contain the coronavirus outbreak. The once again colossal number of filings was worse than the 5 million that Wall Street had expected. Last week's unemployment claim numbers, which government data had pegged at 6.65 million, were revised upward to 6.87 million, the highest ever recorded. The data lags this week, so a large portion of the economic shutdown is now evident over the last 3 weeks. There still may be more huge numbers yet to come. The $2.2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package opened the door to a surge of new unemployment filings, allowing the self-employed and independent contractors to claim benefits. And it looks like they give me a couple of other articles. That was a shorty, I guess. And this is actually from Rush Limbaugh. It's from his monologue. I am not going to read it in Rush's voice for the whole thing. I thought about it. But that is going to be really, really hard on the vocal cords to keep that high-pitched thing going over there. So, we'll just read it in a normal voice on this one. We have more model movement today, ladies and gentlemen. Projected coronavirus deaths in the United States were lowered by 25%, from 81,766 to 60,415 early Wednesday morning. This is the Washington State model, the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, Chris Murray model, IHME. This has been the lead model from the get-go. The model is why we've done what we've done, plus the model from the UK, the Neil Ferguson model. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. That's the model that predicted the 2.2 million if we didn't do anything, and then they revised it. It was 2.2 million US, 500,000 UK if we didn't do anything. Then they factored social distancing in the model. The number went down from 200,000 from 2.2 million. So that model has been used as well, but now projections for coronavirus deaths in the U.S. by 25% from 81,766 to 60,415 early Wednesday morning. Wednesday's dramatic reverse in the model's projection of the U.S. deaths was made without a press release from the IHME explaining the reasons for the reduction, so they just lowered the projection. They didn't tell anybody why. It marks the second reduction in the model's U.S. deaths projected since April 1st, when it forecast 93,765 U.S. fatalities. It's now down to 60,000. What happened to 240,000? What happened to 100,000 to 200,000? What happened to 240,000? Now, this model is predicting down to 60,415, again, a 25% reduction in the models released this morning. Imagine if I read that in Russia's voice and pace, how long that would have taken to get through. But we'll look at another article here on the same thing once again. This is from The Hill. Key coronavirus model revised downward predicts 60K deaths in the U.S. by August. This is from Rebecca Clark. The key forecasting model used by the White House has revised its prediction of COVID-19 deaths in the U.S., now estimating a peak of 60,415 by early August. Come back here. It's one of the reasons I don't like using The Hill. They jump around so bad. The model created by the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington had predicted a peak of 81,766 deaths. In an update on Sunday, public health experts, including Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, have previously estimated as many as 100,000 to 200,000 Americans could die from the novel coronavirus. Across the U.S., nearly 400,000 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed and 12,911 related deaths reported as of Wednesday morning, based on data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. Different models forecasting the coronavirus pandemic are offering varied predictions, however. The IHME, for example, predicts a peak hospital resource use is coming in just a few days on Sunday, while other models officials have cited don't show the outbreak peaking for months. Leaders in Washington, D.C. recently predicted that the pandemic may not peak until June 28th, the Washington Post noted. A spokesperson for the district told the Post officials are using several models, including the one from the IHME, to prepare. While we hope that our experience will follow a curve closer to the IHME model, we cannot use a single model for our preparation and risk being underprepared. We continue to refine our models and assumptions and are tailoring them to the D.C. population and context, spokeswoman Allison Reeves told the newspaper in an email. In New York State, a hotspot for the outbreak, the 3-day average of new hospitalizations continued to fall as of Tuesday morning, a sign possibly indicating social distancing measures could mitigate the spread of the disease. Or, perhaps, enough people are getting it to a point at this point that they're immune, so you're not seeing any more people come to the hospital for it. Or the asymptomatic version is coming up, and a lot of people don't even know that they have it. Maybe they just have a little bit of a sinus infection or a scratchy nasal cavity, and nothing else. That's another possibility as well. So I found a spicy take on this one here. Jake from Freedom Scoop put it in the Generational Gap Discord server. And I looked at it. I was very interested by it, and I wanted to have a look at it a little bit closer. This is from the National Review via Yahoo News from Bruno Macias. China wants to use the coronavirus to take over the world. What started as a catastrophe for China is shaping up to be a moment of strategic opportunity, a rare turning point in the flow of history. Suddenly, the protests in Hong Kong, carrying a mortal threat to the political stability of the mainland, became a physical impossibility. More important, the pandemic set in motion a global competition to contain the virus, for which China and the Chinese Communist Party, seem uniquely prepared. As the virus spread to the whole world, it became apparent that Western societies, Beijing's true rivals, did not have the ability to quickly organize every citizen around a single goal, as opposed to China, which remains to a large extent a revolutionary society. Their political systems were built for normal times. Chinese society is a mobilized army which can quickly drop everything else and march in one direction. Mao once said, "Everything under heaven is in utter chaos. The situation is excellent." And so it seems at present, as seen from Beijing, Chinese diplomats stationed all over the world spend their time raising the stakes to a dangerous level, following instructions from the very top. They have taken to the media to issue a challenge to America to point out its failure, and to compare the chaos in American cities and hospitals with what they see as a singular success in stopping the epidemic in China. Several commentators have suggested that China may be winning the coronavirus battle by stepping forward and providing medical help to affected countries, mostly in Europe, at a time when the United States is consumed with its own difficulties. This misses the point. The cases have been multiplying where the medical equipment provided by Chinese companies and even the Chinese state have turned out to be faulty, provoking justified ire, for example, Spain, the Netherlands, and Turkey. Moreover, medical help is a normal occurrence in a crisis. China has done nothing different except perhaps in the clumsy way it publicizes these efforts. Forget about mask diplomacy. It is no more than a distraction. There are other ways for China to use the coronavirus pandemic to upturn the existing global order. I see three main levers. The first one is the direct comparison between the situation in China and elsewhere. The numbers of cases and fatalities provided by Chinese authorities almost certainly misrepresent the real figures by more than an order of magnitude, but the fact remains that a semblance of normalcy was achieved in a small period of time. If the United States fails to do the same, its prestige will suffer a severe blow. People all over the world will quickly change their perceptions about relative power and capacity. The second lever resides with more industrial value chains. Last month, General Motors, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler all closed their automotive production plants across the United States and Canada. Other sectors have followed. In the meantime, China contained the worst of the pandemic to one province, allowing economic activity to quickly resume elsewhere. The most recent data show renewed activity in the flow of goods across the country, as well as at ports worldwide that do business with China. If the freeze in Europe and America continues for much longer, Chinese companies will be able to dramatically expand market share and replace Western-led value chains. Just yesterday, Chinese authorities announced that manufacturing activity expanded in March, defying expectations of a contraction. In February, the official Purchasing Managers Index hit a record low of 35.7. It bounced back to 52 in March. Prepare for a worldwide wave of Chinese acquisitions at knockdown prices. Finally, in a more extreme scenario, important countries could experience the kind of economic shock that leads to widespread social and political collapse. At that point, China would have a unique opportunity to step in, provide aid, and refashion those countries in its image. It would look like a repeat of the Marshall Plan and the beginning of the American world order after the ravages of World War II. Indonesia, South Asia, and even Russia might be of special interest in such a scenario. And here is the problem with that. Now, I understand that, yes, China is telling us that they've beat this virus, they beat it back, and there's nothing else for China to worry about, that they just suddenly stopped having cases, and I don't buy that. But China also has 1 billion people compared to our 300 million, and they don't care about their people. It's the same thing that makes me actually fear China on the world stage, because China can do the ultimate Zerg rush. For those of you not familiar with StarCraft, and yes, I know I shouldn't be talking about Blizzard right now because I'm on a boycott of them still, but for those of you not familiar with StarCraft, the Zerg is one of the three major species in there, and it's defined by its ability for you to make cheap, disposable units, and a lot of them, in a hurry. And once you have a large enough force banked up because you made them so quickly and so cheaply, you just send them out into battle and not care how many come back. And that's what China can do because they've got a lot of people and they don't necessarily care about them. To them, they are just cheap, expendable resources. So they're zerg rushing their economy, not caring who gets sick and who dies. And they could do the same thing to the rest of the world as well. So that's something that we need to keep in mind as we go ahead. And that's a scary thought. You know, in the U.S., we actually care about our people, and we don't want them to die. We don't want to see a single one of those 60,000 deaths, but we understand that some of these things are going to happen, especially when you have a pandemic that takes everyone by surprise. Even if you've known about it since January. But let's move on. This is from Fox News. Pence vows U.S. will ask the World Health Organization tough questions over how they could have been so wrong about coronavirus. This is from Charles Kreitz over at Fox News. Go away, Hannity. Nobody likes you. Vice President Mike Pence told Hannity Wednesday night that the U.S. will ask tough questions of the World Health Organization over its handling of the coronavirus pandemic after the Global Health Agency's director warned President Trump and other world leaders against politicizing the outbreak. Oh, really? It was Trump that politicized it, huh? This is a president who believes in accountability, and the American taxpayers provide tens of millions of dollars to the WHO, Pence said. And as the president said yesterday, I suspect we will continue to do that. But that doesn't mean that at the right time in the future, we aren't going to ask the tough questions about how the World Health Organization could have been so wrong. Literally, at the time, President Trump stood up to the coronavirus task force on January and suspended all travel from China. Just days before that, the World Health Organization was continuing to diminish the threat of the coronavirus and its impact on China, Pence added. We'll get to the answers of that and we'll create accountability, just like the American people would want us to do. Trump has accused the WHO of being very China-centric and claimed they really blew it in their initial response to the pandemic. On Tuesday, Trump initially told reporters that the U.S. was going to put a hold on the money sent to the WHO, but walked back that statement when questioned, saying that he was going to look into cutting off funding to the agency. In response, WHO Director Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, I probably beat that name up to death, told reporters Wednesday, if you don't want any more body bags, you refrain from politicizing it. Please, quarantine politicizing COVID. Pence also addressed the progress of the outbreak in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Louisiana, saying that the number of new cases showed evidence of the beginning of a stabilization, which is a great credit to the people of all those states. However, the vice president added that we need every American to continue to do their part to observe the federal government's coronavirus guidelines, saying such action will hasten the day that we put the coronavirus in the past, but it's going to take all of us to do it. And the good news is, all evidence suggests that the American people are doing just that. They know our future is in our hands, and as we put the president's coronavirus guidelines into practice, we'll get there, and we will continue to save lives, and we will reach that day much sooner than the people thought in the beginning of this outbreak. So, it's interesting to me that Louisiana comes in with New York, but you also have to keep, and Florida's not in this, and that's what really surprises me. The thing that doesn't bother me, that it's most interesting to me when I think about it, is the fact that, yes, de Blasio said, go out, go about your lives, go out and party, do whatever you need to do, when the COVID-19 virus was moving around the country. And Louisiana said they were absolutely not going to cancel Mardi Gras for it. But the Florida Spring Breakers didn't get the same amount of death toll and disease toll as these other two hotspots did. And that was the same thing. All the Spring Breakers said, oh, well, we're just going to go out there and have a party and have a good time. Consequences be damned. So I do have to wonder if there's some actuality to the idea that the warm weather and the sun does kill this virus. I mean, it's not exactly cold in Louisiana, don't get me wrong, but they have a much different climate than Florida does. So, something to think about. Just something to keep in the back of your mind as we're closing this out. Let's check in with the Daily Wire. AG Barr, the Chinese are engaged in a full court blitzkrieg against the U.S. This is by Daily Wire News. Attorney General William Barr told Fox News' Laura Ingraham on Wednesday night that the Chinese government is engaged in a full court blitzkrieg against the United States. The virus originated in China. We still don't have all the data. We still don't really know about patient zero in China, Ingraham said, as I used my William Barr voice. A lot of that data is being withheld from the United States, and top medical people are saying that. What about the Justice Department getting involved more? I guess. Obviously, to the American people, this battle against the ongoing propaganda machine of China in the United States at our universities and businesses. Hey, in the White House press room the other day. Yes, the department is heavily engaged in that. In fact, that's one of our highest priorities in the counterintelligence realm, counterespionage realm, and protection of trade secrets as our activities directed to defend against the Chinese, Barr responded. The Chinese are engaged in a full court blitzkrieg of stealing American technology, trying to influence our political system, trying to steal secrets at our research universities, and so forth, and we are focused on it. We have something we call the China Initiative. We've brought a lot of indictments, but it's something we also have to expose by letting the business community understand exactly the nature of the threat. Given what you know today about the panoply of abuses internationally against the United States, who's the bigger threat to America's election security? Russia or China? Oh, Jesus Christ. Don't start this up again. In my opinion, it's China, Barr responded, and not just to the election process, but I think across the board. There's simply no comparison. China is a very serious threat to the United States geopolitically, economically, militarily, and a threat to the integrity of our institutions given their ability to influence things. So Barr is all in against China. That'll be interesting to watch as election time comes up. I've got one more here from the Daily Wire. It begins. Japan pays billions to firms to leave China. Relocate production elsewhere. This is from Ryan Saavedra. Japan has earmarked hundreds of billions of yen of its coronavirus stimulus relief to go towards helping its manufacturing companies move their production plants out of communist China and back to Japan or other countries. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the exchange rate, but I believe the yen is very, very low value per yen. So, what, hundreds of billions of yen? That's like $50, isn't it? It's probably a little bit more than that, but yeah. What do we could say? 100,000 yen is like $20 or something like that. The extra budget compiled to try and offset the devastating effects of the pandemic include 220 billion yen. Oh, well, there's our exchange rate right there. US $2 billion. Wow, it caught that much up. For companies shifting production back to Japan, and 23.5 billion yen for those seeking to move production to other countries, according to details of the plan posted online. Bloomberg News reported. That has renewed talk of Japanese firms reducing their reliance on China as a manufacturing base. The government's panel on future investment last month discussed the need for manufacturing of high added value products to be shifted back to Japan and for production of other goods to be diversified across Southeast Asia. The move comes after Communist China lied to the world about the extent of the coronavirus outbreak in their country and tried to cover it up, which led to the outbreak spreading like wildfire throughout China and eventually the rest of the world. China is Japan's biggest trading partner under normal circumstances, but imports from China slumped by almost half in February as the disease closed factories, in turn starving Japanese manufacturers of unnecessary components. Bloomberg News added, Japan exports a far larger share of parts and partially finished goods to China than other major industrial nations, according to data compiled for the panel. A February survey by Tokyo Shoko Research found 37% of the more than 2,600 companies that responded were diversifying procurement to places other than China amid the coronavirus crisis. So people are starting to pull out of China, and I do think that we're going to see some of the end of globalism. I think Poole is right when he talks about that. This is going to make it hard for people to want to relocate jobs across borders. It'd be different for the U.S. to put a factory in Canada or Mexico, but to throw one in China or Turkey or Greece or something like that, what happens when your supply lines are cut? We see this, and we saw something like this once our medical supply lines were cut. You want to have that right here at home so we can take care of our own people, or at least have the ability to build it up in a hurry. So those are things to think about. I got a couple more stories here, and then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. So, from Newsweek, rent strikes gather steam as campaigners call for payments to be waived completely to help people survive COVID-19 crisis. By Khalida Rahman. Jackson Frezier didn't pay his rent on April 1st. I did. He won't be able to pay it in May either. I will. He is among the millions across the U.S. unable to work or laid off due to shutdowns in place because of the coronavirus pandemic. In Austin, Texas, where he lives, officials have imposed a 2-month moratorium on evictions. Cities, including New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, and states including Texas, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, have also temporarily banned evictions. I think that's supposed to say temporarily. Although eviction cases can still be filed in some places. But that's not enough, Frazier says, because those left without an income have no idea when they'll be able to work and make enough to pay their rent again. In the meantime, he and many others are also accruing enormous late fees. Frazier, a manual laborer, has joined almost a dozen residents in his building in a rent strike after discussing how the shelter-in-place order would affect their ability to pay rent. We came to the conclusion that we couldn't and that we needed a strategy for dealing with that, he told Newsweek. Frazier said his building's management only allows residents some relief with very specific proof of their employment situation. Even then, it doesn't help their situation because they can't agree to a payment plan without any income. Payment plans don't work for us right now. We aren't making income, and we don't know when we will again, he added. He said he joined the rent strike ATX campaign with the hopes of bringing landlords to the table to negotiate with tenants. He added, while shelter in place is in effect, we shouldn't have to choose between rent payments and affording food and medicine because we can't. We don't think anybody should be pushed out of their homes, especially in time of crisis like this. Rent strike ATX say despite the 60-day grace period for tenants to come up with a rent in Austin, unemployed renters will continue to fall behind, accrue late fees, and face eviction. The idea of rent strikes has gathered steam in recent weeks in other places across the U.S. and abroad. Social media is awash with pictures of people hanging white sheets and banners from their windows to indicate they won't be paying. Look for those places because the rent is going to drop on some of those places and the landlords are going to be looking to get new people in a hurry. Many tenants, unions, and campaigners say the only way to help renters through the crisis is for rent payments to be waived completely for the foreseeable future. A group called Rent Strike 2020 is organizing a campaign on a national level, calling for governors to freeze rent, mortgage, and utility bill payments for 2 months or face a strike. On its website, the group said it collected 2 million signatures within 48 hours of starting a petition. Another petition urging New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to freeze rent payments for all residents in the city's hardest hit by the pandemic, has amassed almost 95,000 signatures. Guess what, guys? The government can't do that. That is the government coming in and taking over private property. In New York, a 3-month moratorium on evictions has been imposed and mortgage payments have been suspended for 90 days for those affected by the crisis, but Cuomo is yet to offer similar relief to renters. Democratic Senator Mike Giarnis from Queens has introduced a bill that would provide rent relief for people and businesses struggling due to the crisis. Tenants can't pay rent if they can't earn a living. Let's cancel rent for 90 days to keep people in their homes during the coronavirus crisis, Giarnis wrote on Twitter. So, the problem that I have with this is that I look at the ZipRecruiter app, which I still have because I wasn't sure if I was going to be making the move to the store that I work at now. And I was getting sick of making the drive to the store that I had to go 45 miles a day to go to because I wasn't making enough to justify 45 miles a day. So I did start looking. I went on ZipRecruiter. And I've fallen off. I haven't really looked at it much anymore because I'm pretty satisfied with where I am. And I don't want to go and work somewhere else when I want to take the time the rest of my life and build Freedom Scoop up to the best that I think it can be. I don't think that it's fair for me to go to find another employer if I can't give them the commitment. But I do keep the ZipRecruiter app on my phone. This is not a promotion for ZipRecruiter, by the way. This is just a personal anecdote. That thing keeps buzzing daily. I see 6 or 7 job openings a day or more. People are still hiring through this. You just have to be willing to look. And I bet you if I switched my location to Austin, Texas, I would get another 100, 200 jobs out there open and available. Or more. And that's just what's on ZipRecruiter. That's not on any other hiring site. So for you to say you can't go out and find work, you can go out and find work. It's not that hard. Plus, the delivery services are out there. Most places are set down for takeout only. You can go Uber Eat for a little while. You can do Uber Eats or what's the one I like? Eat Street. Or Grubhub for that matter for a little while. It's not going to be glamorous, but it's not going to be a forever thing either. It'll keep food in your belly and the roof over your head until you can go out and find something else. Or go back to your original job. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not hard to make money in the gig economy. And certain people still can't cook. All right, last one before we do a thing I like and a thing I hate. Cardi B, furious with young fans for not voting for Bernie Sanders, warns of a second term for Trump. This is from Tyler McCarthy. Cardi B held a fiery Instagram live video Wednesday to chastise young people for not voting for Bernie Sanders and to warn about the dangers of a second term in the White House for Donald Trump. The 27-year-old rapper who vocally supported Sanders in his 2020 bid got heated and pulled no punches with her younger followers after hearing the news that Sanders had officially suspended his campaign, effectively ending the 2020 primary process and making current delegate frontrunner Joe Biden the presumptive nominee. As you know, Bernie dropped out of the race. He dropped out of the race, and he dropped out of the race. I'm guessing he dropped out because I'm seeing he probably saw that he didn't have a good chance at winning. Cardi yelled at her followers in an Instagram live video. The shit that gets me mad about this is that it's like, I see a lot of young people on the internet always lying. You motherfuckers, you young motherfuckers. I'm getting sick of y'all. I'm about to start hanging out with my grandma's friends because they vote. She continued, y'all be like, we love Bernie. I've been seeing all over Twitter and like, y'all love Bernie and y'all love Bernie, but you all wasn't voting and y'all wasn't voting. What the fuck was up with that? Charming. Sanders held a commanding lead over his fellow Democratic presidential hopefuls, especially Biden, in the first few primary states. However, the former vice president took a commanding lead on Super Tuesday that the Sanders campaign simply couldn't bounce back from. Cardi went on to note that she now has to educate herself on Biden since she feels it's very important to rally behind a Democrat to ensure, there it is, right there, to ensure that Trump does not secure another term in the White House. I don't really know much about Biden, but I'm gonna have to start researching him and learning more about this man because whoever the fuck, I do not want 45 to be president again. She continued, this shit is very fucking serious and y'all not taking another motherfucking serious. Right now, the state that America is in, we got no time to play around. You really got to think about yourself. We're about to go into another recession. Okay. She explained that the end of the coronavirus pandemic will just be the beginning of the country's problems after the economy takes an inevitable dip thanks to countless Americans being out of work, as all non-essential businesses are forced to shutter in an effort to curtail the spread of the virus. Do you really want 45 to be in charge of the recession? Fucking Obama cleaned the recession up, and he did the best he can 45, he's not capable of fucking handling that. And his country is going to motherfucking come up with, he's not, she concluded. And if you think that he gives a fuck about minorities with no job, you're dead fucking wrong. Dead fucking wrong. Charming. I have no words for that. I would have a commentary on that, but I have no words for that. That is Cardi B, the leader of our educational revolution. That's not the word I was looking for. I got dumber reading that. Holy shit. Anyway, with that, we're going to go on and talk about a thing I like and a thing that I hate, and then we're going to get on out of here so I can go to work and get prepared for our 12-hour stream coming up tomorrow. So, the thing that I like, of course, today is the fact that, we're getting a handle on this COVID thing. We were all really, really worried, and I even said that 2%, if this was going to be Spanish flu level numbers, which is what Styx was talking about in the beginning, and he was the first person to be talking about it ever. Nobody in the mainstream was really talking about it. Styx started it before everybody else did. And he said 2 to 5% Spanish flu levels, which would be millions of Americans. We could almost hit 10 million Americans if that was the case. And now we're looking at the point where we're getting down to 60,000 possible deaths out of this. We're getting a handle on this. The American people are resilient, and we are looking forward to finding ways to get people back to work and get people working again, get the economy going again. And no matter what our intellectual leader, Cardi B, had to say about all of this, yes, we do care about people not having jobs, and we're not going to see a recession. Look at it. Look at it jump again. I know the stock market is not the indicator of the economy, but as soon as the Bernie Bros and all the other hateful Democrats out there see that the stock market is going down, they'll be the first ones to say, once the stock market is going up, that it's not a sign of the economy. But as soon as it's going back down, the first thing they say is, "Hey, how is that Trump economy doing for you, maggots?" Ha 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 ha. So, I do like the fact that we have this under control, it seems, for the most part. And we're going to come out of this. We are definitely going to come out of this. We may come out of this better than some other countries, but we are definitely going to come out of this. Now for a thing that I hate. So, a thing that I hate today is that Bernie Sanders dropped out, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. Don't cut that out of context. I love the fact that Bernie Sanders dropped out. But this has poured extra salt into the wounds of the Bernie Bros, and they are out in force on Twitter, taking anybody who may be a Biden fan, they're taking them on, but especially the right, and especially anybody who didn't go through their particular model of educational revolution. I got into an argument with one of these Bernie Bros yesterday because he commented on Styx's video saying that, well, we need to make college free so people like Styx can go back to college and get a proper education. And I commented back. I said, don't you mean go back to college so you can get properly indoctrinated? And that just unleashed a wave of pissed off people who told me that I was probably disruptive and that I couldn't have been indoctrinated because I went to school, and that doesn't happen. They promote free thought. That was one of the things that they kept saying was, oh, college promotes free thought. You were probably just disruptive. Well, here's the reality. What you're saying when you say you were probably just disruptive, that means that you weren't free thinking the right way. You weren't free thinking the proper way. And they just kept doubling down on this idea that I didn't know how to free think because I went to school, or I dropped out of school. That was the other one too. My problem was that I dropped out of school. I went to a trade school, obviously. Most of my listeners know that. That was my problem, was that I dropped out and I went to trade school. And I didn't learn how to think freely, properly. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. The rest of them are going out and, attacking anybody else that they can get their hands on, especially the MAGA crowd. I made a joke with Politibunny, the Foo, over on Twitter, who is a great follow. If you don't follow her, I definitely recommend that you do. And the joke that I came up with was, she had said that we do need to go out and get a grip on all of this and, get a grip on everything else in the country. And I said, how do you like that Trump economy now? The Trump economy is kicking in. How do you like that now, maggot? And I told her to prepare for a lot of that. And which she pointed out the fact that she's not getting the economy one. She's just getting the "you hate my grandma" speech out of everybody else. So this is going to be a very salty day on Twitter. And I'm probably going to be on Twitter for a little bit today just to do some promotion and do some regular shit talking like I always do, to draw people, followers, and draw people to my channel. But I'm going to be taking it easy for a bit, I think. I really am. Because there's going to be so much salt out there, and there's not going to be any intellectual argument. It's just going to be people that think that Bernie got cheated and he was actually the leading candidate, and that everything else was rigged, and every other excuse that they came up with in 2016 except times 10. Well, I'm going to get to work on getting some of these audio platforms out. I'm a little behind on the audio platforms here, but I'm going to get to work on that. Then I'm going to go and do my job for the day, get done. Maybe we'll play some video games tonight, because I don't have to be back to my regular job tomorrow. But just a little bit of loosening up before we do the big telethon. I got to do a little bit more preparation for that. But we will be back here tomorrow before the telethon for more Contemporary. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care, guys.